Hello, this is Jeff Bell, Chief Administrative Officer of the Crimson Political Action Council, and I'm very fortunate to be with Mr. Junior Ezeonu, Grand Prairie, Texas City Council member. And we've had several very good conversations about the great things that he's doing. And very interested, Mr. Ezeonu, in your take on Project 2025 and how you would envision the potential impact that it may have on the things that you're trying to accomplish as a city council member in Grand Prairie. Um, what's your take initially on Project 2025?
No, definitely. It's a great question. And thank you again, Mr. Jeff, for the invitation and to the entire Crimson Pack for your support during my reelection bid. I'm so grateful for y'all support. And Project 2025 is a very frightening and scary thing for many of us. I'm a Gen Zer, I guess they will call me. I'm not a millennial, but I did not grow up during the civil rights era. I did not grow up in the 70s, 80s. I grew up privileged. I grew up in the 2000s, 2010s, when we thought that we had escaped a lot of the, I don't want to use this word, but I have to, some of the prejudice and racist policies of the past. We thought we've advanced and escaped a lot of these policies that hurt communities of color and hurt working class, middle class, and poor people in our community. And Project 2025 is a culmination of all of these policies put together. Just let's look at the Department of Education, trying to abolish the Department of Education. I want us to remember back in 2016 when Donald Trump was elected, his first appointee for his education secretary was Betsy DeVos. And what is Betsy DeVos known very well for? She, in Michigan, helped push for a lot of the charter schools and the funding of public education, as well as trying to create the voucher system that we're seeing in other states like Arizona, Texas. They're trying to push this voucher system, which is literally taking public tax dollars and giving it to folks to send their kids to private schools, utilizing public tax dollars, which are supposed to be solely for public schools, public tax dollars to put certain kids in certain schools that not all kids will have to be privileged enough to go to. The thing about a private school, same thing with a charter school, they choose their students. A public school has to accept everybody, whether you make poor grades, whether you're disabled, they have to create accommodations. Some of these systems that they're trying to push with these voucher programs and abolishing the Department of Education will put us in a world where they can discriminate against students that don't fit what they're looking for, and also take the federal government and the state government's money to fund their classes and fund their schools. Which in the past, we remember for Black folks, it meant that Black folks weren't allowed to go to certain schools or put in separate but equal schools, and were treated less fairly. These same things are coming back. And for those that don't know their history, if you don't know your history, it can repeat itself. And sometimes history won't repeat itself, but it may often rhyme. So just with abolishing the Department of Education is a big fear for me, for my community, my city. My city, we have about 45% of our city that's Hispanic, 25% is Black, about 20 to 25% is white, about 8% is Asian. We're a very diverse community, a working class, middle class community where we really care about our public schools. We want our public schools to be good, but we also want the protections that the federal government gives us through the Department of Education to protect against discrimination in the schools.
If Project 2025 is implemented, what do you see as some of the specific impact on a public school or public school children?
Biggest fear for me is the defunding of public schools. In the state of Texas, unfortunately, I have to talk about my state. They've been pushing to take away more and more dollars out of the public school systems and funnel them into the charter schools and also the private schools. There's a bill that they tried to pass in this past legislative session, which would have created something called an education savings account, where every parent would get $8,000 for each child to put them in a private school. But the thing is, $8,000 is not enough for even one semester of a private school tuition. But the goal is to just start the program, allow the rich parents to essentially get a subsidy to keep their kids in the private schools that they're already going to, because it doesn't benefit working class, middle class people that won't be able to afford it at all. But eventually you keep drawing away more and more dollars away from these public schools that are already severely underfunded in working class poor areas, because a lot of public school funding comes from property taxes on your home. And if you live in a lower socioeconomic status community, your schools are not going to be as good because they don't have as much money, just to start off with. But they're going to continue to siphon away more and more dollars from the public schools, increase the amount of money that they're giving to folks to put their kids into educational savings accounts for these private schools. And eventually the public schools will be so dilapidated and distraught that folks won't even consider putting their kids in public schools. They're going to look towards solely the private schools or maybe even charter. But then what about that family that's only making $40,000 or $50,000 or $60,000 a year, has 2 or 3 kids? They can't afford to pay $25,000 or $20,000 a semester to put their kid in a 7th grade class at a private school. So the long-term effects of Project 25 and Project 2025, when we solely look at education, is create an educational caste system where working class families and a lot of times minority families are not able to afford a decent education for just primary and secondary school. Not even talking about college. Another thing that I want to speak about when we look at education, but also across the board, is with DEI. Within Project 2025, there's a provision that is looking to ban DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, in public spaces, in public schools across the country. Currently in Texas, our governor and state legislature banned it just last year during a legislative session, which has hurt a lot of our public institutions, our colleges, our high schools, middle schools, because DEI is not, I always tell people, it's not that it gives an advantage to a person of color. It just, the goal of DEI is to level the playing field to where everybody has an opportunity to excel. Everybody has an opportunity to be employed if they're qualified. DEI, the goal of DEI is not equality of outcome, it's equality of opportunity. And I think we got to keep speaking to that and letting people know this is what they're trying to do. Another thing that I wanted to speak about that really matters to me, that's really important, is they're trying to curtail the infrastructure, the bipartisan infrastructure bill that passed just in 2021 or 2022, $3 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill that has a lot of dollars that's come into my city to help us rebuild and fix our streets, our water systems, maintain our water systems, fund our airport, provide subsidies for folks that aren't able to afford internet. There's so many great things that have come out of that bipartisan infrastructure law that helps working class communities like mine. And any idea of cutting funding for it would be detrimental to my constituents.
Yeah, I listened to you about the funding of schools. It's almost like they're robbing the poor to give to the rich.
Yes.
And I think you did say something very significant in terms of the development of a caste system. So if you know in America, you know what that means.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you suppose, let's say, for instance, the opposition to the infrastructure bill, what do you think is the purpose? What's their end game for those who promote Project 2025 in your estimation?
With that one, it confuses me. And the reason that it confuses me is when the law was passed, it was a bipartisan bill. We had several conservative lawmakers cross over to support it because we understand that many parts of our country need this infrastructure package to fund basic improvements. People don't think about it, but the funding that we get for these capital improvement projects is what allows us to maintain the cleanliness of water for our community. That's what it's what allows us to just fill a pothole in the road. Basic amenities, making sure that that Encore for Texas, we use Encore. They're the ones that provide our electricity, is well funded and has the resources if there's ever a catastrophe, disaster, or whatever. It's basic. So with that one, I'm not sure, but I would tell you it's probably the idea of smaller government. For a long time, the people that are behind Project 2025 is the Heritage Foundation. And you know, with the Heritage Foundation, they're a think tank that pushes a lot of small government policies. And keep in mind, it's small government when it comes to improving the lives of working class and middle class people. But they like it to be big government when it comes to going into your private life and policing what you do as an individual by yourself. So we got to keep in mind that it's not so much small government, but small government and the fact that they want to reduce how much money the federal government is spending for these projects. These projects are really necessary, especially if you truly believe in capitalism. We're taught if you invest in your infrastructure, you have safety and security in your communities. That's going to drive the economy and economic progress in your community. Economic development will come into communities that have safe roads, safe streets, that have access points to businesses. So that infrastructure bill, that's why many conservatives supported it, because they understand with good infrastructure, good city planning, community planning, that's how you drive economic development. Big box retailers don't want to go somewhere that is hard to reach because of bad roads. They want to go somewhere that their employees can get to work easily, and also people can come and shop and patronize them easily with accessible roads, basic infrastructure that's met.
It also creates jobs for working class people. And there's the allocation of resources to allow people to climb that upward, that ladder, the upward mobility.
Exactly.
If you had to think in comparison and contrast some of your policy initiatives that you've recently, some of your accomplishments previously, and some of the things you're looking forward to, how do you, to the voter, to the public in Grand Prairie, in Texas, or even in the United States, how do you promote the type of policies that you promote that are stand in opposition to Project 2025? How do you sell people on the significance of progressing in a way in the opposite direction of Project 2025?
It's a really good question. I would say that for us, in Texas, we believe in local control. We believe in allowing city council members and mayors to make decisions for their communities because they elected us to make a decision for this community. And with Project 2025, a lot of times it reminds me of what I see from the state legislature when it comes to preemption, taking away my power and responsibility as a city council member to get things done for my community. With infrastructure, it's a basic thing. There's no reason why we should be trying to cut funding for infrastructure. Folks, when they call me regarding a power outage or call me regarding an issue with a pothole or a road that needs to be repaired or just reconstructed, it's because of infrastructure. When we look at the environment, no matter if you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you care about the environment because you want to make sure that your children are breathing fresh and clean air. You want to make sure that the water that they're drinking does not have PFAS or any of these forever chemicals. You want to make sure that you live in a safe, secure community. The environment is very important. A lot of folks like green space, they like park spaces, they like these different things. Within Project 2025, they're trying to cut back on the progress that we've made with the EPA and through the Inflation Reduction Act that push for a lot more clean energy programs to reduce emissions. In Grand Prairie, Texas, we just got done with our greenhouse gas inventory study, where we study to see how much emissions our city is pumping into the atmosphere and how can we reduce it and mitigate these emissions to create a more cleaner environment. Project 2025 wants to cut our legs underneath us and hamstring us and prevent us from being able to create policies to address these issues. I like to tell folks, if you ever look at certain communities that live close to the major industrial plants that emit a lot of pollution and contaminants into the air, people that live around those areas usually have asthma, some have cancer, different ailments as a result. If we don't have leaders fighting for us both at the federal, state, and local level when it comes to just the environment, we're reducing our lifetime. We're reducing our quality of life. And if Project 2025 came to fruition, it would take away a lot of the progress that we've made in trying to create a more safe and cleaner environment for everybody. And the thing about the environment, I'll tell any of my constituents, it affects all of us no matter how much money we make, no matter where we send our kids to school. We are all impacted by good or bad policies when it comes to the environment. So that's how I would sell it to them and explain it to them.
Okay, we're gonna have to get to a stopping point because we could probably do this for another 4 hours, and maybe we'll have the opportunity to revisit this issue. I
Definitely.
certainly appreciate you. We're very proud of you here at the Crimson Pack, and we support you in all that you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate you. And thank you to the Crimson Pack for your continuous support. Whatever I can do to be of service, y'all let me know. But just thank you again for having me and supporting me.
Thank you. Take care of yourself.
All right. You too.